All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something pretty ambitious.
Okay.
10 terawatts of clean energy capacity in the next 10 years.
Wow.
That's the goal laid out by Terra Praxis in their report, 10 terawatts in 10 years.
Right.
And it's got me wondering if we're on the verge of a clean energy revolution.
It's certainly a bold vision,
Yeah.
especially when you consider that carbon emissions are still rising,
Yeah.
even with the growth of renewables.
Right.
If things keep going this way, we're looking at a 3 to 4 degrees Celsius warming by 2100.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly a sunny outlook.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But this report throws a pretty interesting wrench into the works.
Yeah.
They're not just talking about incremental progress.
Right.
They're aiming for a complete energy transformation,
Yeah.
enough clean energy to bring everyone up to the living standards of developed countries. Think widespread access to healthcare education technology.
Yeah.
That's the kind of impact they're going for.
Yeah. And they're exploring some pretty unconventional ideas to get there.
Okay.
Things like using existing fossil fuel infrastructure.
Interesting.
A concept they call heat boxes.
Yeah, I saw that term.
Even drawing inspiration from industries like data centers and shipbuilding. Not your typical energy conversation.
Not at all.
Right.
Heat boxes definitely caught my attention too.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit sci-fi, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But before we get into that,
Okay.
let's talk about the scale of the challenge.
Okay.
We're aiming for 10 terawatts in 10 years.
Right.
But what does that actually mean in the grand scheme of things?
Well, the report points out that we need to add a staggering 30 terawatts of new energy capacity by 2050,
Wow.
just to reach OECD-level living standards globally.
Okay.
We're talking 3 times the current global energy supply.
So not just keeping the lights on,
No.
but providing the energy foundation for billions to leap forward.
Exactly.
That's a massive undertaking.
It is.
But the report claims it's possible.
They do.
And they seem pretty focused on these heat boxes as a key part of the solution.
Yeah.
Can you break down what those actually are?
Imagine advanced nuclear reactors.
Okay.
But instead of the massive one-off construction projects we're used to,
Right.
these are designed for mass production.
Oh, okay.
Picture factories churning out standardized reactors,
Interesting.
like cars on an assembly line.
So it's like applying the principles of mass manufacturing to nuclear energy.
Exactly.
Kind of like what happened with data centers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They used to be these bespoke, expensive projects,
Right.
but then standardization came along
Yeah.
and everything changed.
The Open Compute project revolutionized data centers
Mm-hmm.
by creating open source designs and standardized components.
Well-
Costs plummeted, innovation boomed, and the whole industry was transformed.
Wow.
Terra Praxis believes we can do the same for nuclear energy.
That's a pretty bold comparison.
It is.
So it makes you wonder if they can pull it off. Could this be the key to unlocking nuclear power's potential?
It's a big if,
Yeah.
but the report lays out a pretty compelling case.
Okay.
They've identified 5 key conditions that need to be met by 2030
Okay.
to make this 10 terawatt goal a reality.
All right.
It's a tight timeline, but they argue it's doable.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Let's dive into those conditions.
Oh.
So what's the first hurdle they need to clear?
First and foremost, they need to get those mass manufactured heat boxes up and running.
Okay.
That means building entire supply chains for the components and materials,
Right.
training specialized personnel, the whole works.
Wow.
It's a massive industrial undertaking.
So it's not just about designing a cool reactor.
No.
It's about creating an entire manufacturing ecosystem to support it.
It is.
What's next on their list?
Standardization is key.
Okay.
They're proposing standardized deployment architectures,
Interesting.
almost like IKEA for power plants.
IKEA for power plants.
Yeah.
Now that's an image. But seriously, that kind of modular approach could really speed things up.
It could.
It's like having a set of blueprints that you can adapt to different locations. Less custom engineering, less construction time.
Exactly.
And that ties into their third condition,
Okay.
streamlined licensing.
Yeah.
They're proposing a product-based licensing approach
Right?
where you get pre-approval for a standardized reactor design
Uh-huh.
and then adapt it to specific sites.
Right.
And get this,
Okay.
they're even looking at using AI to accelerate the process.
AI for nuclear licensing.
Now that sounds futuristic.
It does.
It's like using technology to cut through the bureaucratic red tape.
Hmm.
Starting to see how this could actually work.
Yeah.
But even with the tech and the approvals in place,
Yeah.
there's still the question of financing.
Right.
That's their fourth condition.
Yeah.
Creating attractive business models that make sense for investors.
It's got to make financial sense.
Makes sense. You need to convince people that this is a worthwhile investment.
Absolutely.
How are they planning to do that?
The report emphasizes the need for clear economics,
Okay.
diverse revenue streams,
Right.
and leveraging existing infrastructure to reduce costs.
Okay.
They're looking at everything from power sales to capacity payments, even selling the heat generated by these reactors.
So it's about creating a multifaceted financial package
Yeah.
that minimizes risk
Yeah.
and maximizes returns.
Right.
But even with the best business plan,
Yeah.
you still need buyers, right?
You do.
Which brings us to their fifth condition.
Right.
Large-scale purchase commitments
Yeah.
from major energy users.
Think Google, Microsoft, heavy industries. Companies that are serious about decarbonizing
Right.
and need a reliable source of clean energy.
So it's about getting those big players to step up
Yeah.
and say, we're all in on this clean energy future.
Right.
That kind of market signal would send a powerful message to investors. It would show that there's real demand for this technology
Uh-huh.
and that it's not just a theoretical concept.
It would.
They even have a real-world example already underway in Ukraine,
Oh, that's right.
the Repower program.
Yeah.
They're converting coal plants to nuclear using this standardized approach.
Right.
That's a pretty bold move considering everything that's happening over there.
It is. It's a testament to their commitment to this vision.
Yeah.
They're not just writing reports. They're actively working to make it a reality.
That's impressive.
It is.
But let's be realistic. This whole plan hinges on nuclear energy,
Right.
and that comes with its own set of challenges and perceptions.
Just does.
I'm sure some of our listeners are already raising an eyebrow.
Yeah, probably.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle the elephant in the room. Those concerns about nuclear energy, I mean, it's understandable. The word nuclear tends to evoke images of Chernobyl or Fukushima, right? Not exactly a selling point for a clean energy future.
It's true those historical events cast a long shadow. But it's important to remember that the nuclear technology Terra Praxis is focusing on is fundamentally different from those older reactor designs.
So what are we talking about here? What makes these heat boxes different?
Well, for one, they're much smaller. These are small modular reactors, or SMRs. That smaller size inherently limits the scale of any potential incident.
So even if something goes wrong, the consequences are likely to be far less severe.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just size. They're also designed with passive safety systems. Think natural forces like gravity and convection, doing the work of cooling the reactor core. No need for complex pumps or external power sources that could fail.
So even in a worst-case scenario, like a power outage, these reactors are designed to shut themselves down safely.
That's the idea. Inherent safety is built into the design from the ground up, which brings us to another common concern. Cost nuclear has a reputation for being expensive, and those cost overruns often make headlines.
Yeah, that's something I've always wondered about. How can nuclear compete with the falling costs of renewables, especially solar and wind?
That's where the mass manufacturing approach comes in. By standardizing designs and producing reactors on an assembly line, Terra Praxis believes they can drive down costs significantly. They estimate a 100-megawatt heat box could be manufactured for around $60 million. That's about $600 per kilowatt.
Okay, but how does that compare to the cost of building a new solar or wind farm?
That's the interesting part. When you factor in the cost of battery storage, to make those intermittent renewable sources reliable 2047, the cost comparison starts to shift in favor of nuclear.
So it's not just about the upfront cost of the technology. It's about the total cost of providing reliable energy. That makes sense? But even with those cost advantages, there's still the issue of regulation. Nuclear projects are notoriously slow and complex to get approved. How are they tackling that?
They're working directly with regulators to streamline the licensing process. They're advocating for this product-based licensing approach, where you get pre-approval for a standardized reactor design and then adapt it to specific sites. And get this, they're even exploring the use of AI to accelerate those approvals.
Wow. Starting to see how this could actually work. But even if we solve the tech and regulatory hurdles, there's still the question of scale. We need to deploy these reactors on a massive scale to make a real dent in emissions. How are they planning to pull that off?
That's where the industrial sector comes in. They see heavy industries as a key driver of this transition. Think steel, cement, chemicals, industries that are major energy consumers and emitters. They're actively seeking ways to decarbonize, and they need solutions that can provide reliable, high-temperature heat.
So not just replacing electricity, but also providing clean heat for those energy-intensive processes. And nuclear seems well suited for that, right?
Exactly. And we're already seeing signs of this shift. Companies like Microsoft and Google are committing to 100% clean energy, and they're increasingly looking at nuclear as part of that mix. Even Dow Chemical is planning to install an SMR at their Texas site to replace natural gas.
Those are some pretty big names making some serious commitments. It sounds like there's real momentum building, but we're talking about a global energy transformation. What kind of investment are we talking about here?
The report estimates that we'll need around $20 trillion in cumulative investment through 2040 to achieve this 10-terawatt goal.
$20 trillion. That's a mind-boggling number. Where's all that money going to come from?
It's important to remember that this is spread out over nearly 2 decades, and the report emphasizes that these projects will be commercially viable, attracting mainstream investors. Plus, when you compare it to the projected cost of relying solely on renewables, estimated to be double that amount, it starts to look more manageable.
So it's a significant investment, but potentially a more cost-effective one in the long run. But even if the economics work out, there's still the issue of public perception, convincing people to embrace nuclear energy, especially after those high-profile accidents. Is it a tall order? How are they planning to address that?
They acknowledge that public acceptance is crucial, and they believe that transparency, education, and open dialogue are key. They're working to demystify nuclear technology, address concerns head-on, and highlight the safety advancements that have been made.
So it's about building trust and having honest conversations about the risks and benefits. But it's not just about changing minds. It's also about giving people a sense of ownership over this transition. Right?
Absolutely. It's about empowering people to make informed decisions based on facts, not fear. And ultimately, it's about showing them how nuclear energy can be a part of a cleaner, safer, and more prosperous future for everyone.
It's a compelling vision, but it's definitely a long road ahead. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this whole plan? What stands out to you as the most promising aspect?
For me, it's the combination of ambition and pragmatism. They've set this incredibly audacious goal, but they've also laid out a concrete roadmap for how to get there.
I agree. It's not just a pie-in-the-sky dream. It's a well-researched, actionable plan.
Yeah.
But there are definitely some big questions that need to be answered. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the urgency of the climate crisis to the potential of these mass-manufactured nuclear reactors. It's been quite a journey, but there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to examine: the risks and challenges that come with scaling up nuclear energy.
It's crucial to acknowledge those concerns. After all, we're talking about a technology that has the potential for both immense benefits and significant risks.
Right.
We can't just gloss over those.
Right, so let's dive into some of those tough questions.
Okay.
Top of mind for many people is safety. Those historical nuclear accidents like Chernobyl and Fukushima are hard to forget.
Right.
How is Terra Praxis addressing those concerns?
Well, as we discussed earlier, the SMRs they're focusing on are fundamentally different from those older reactor designs. Their smaller size, passive safety systems, and inherent safety features make them far less prone to catastrophic meltdowns.
So they're designed to fail safely, even in extreme situations.
Exactly. But beyond the technology itself, there's also the issue of human error.
Right.
No system is foolproof, and accidents can happen.
Yeah.
That's why Terra Praxis emphasizes the importance of rigorous training, robust safety protocols, and a culture of vigilance throughout the entire nuclear industry.
That makes sense. You need to address both the technical and human factors to ensure safety. But even with the safest reactors, there's still the issue of nuclear waste.
Yeah.
What happens to that waste, and how do they plan to manage it?
That's another area where Terra Praxis is taking a different approach. They're advocating for advanced recycling technologies that can reprocess spent nuclear fuel, reducing the volume of waste and extracting valuable materials that can be used again.
So it's like closing the loop on the nuclear fuel cycle.
Right.
Minimizing waste and maximizing resource utilization.
Yeah.
That sounds promising, but what about the risk of proliferation?
Yeah.
Couldn't these technologies be misused to create weapons?
That's a valid concern, and it's something that needs to be addressed at both the national and international levels.
Okay.
Terra Praxis is working with policymakers and international organizations to strengthen safeguards and ensure that these technologies are used responsibly and peacefully.
So it's about having strong regulations and international cooperation to prevent the misuse of this technology.
Yeah.
But even if we address all these concerns, there's still the challenge of public perception. Convincing people that nuclear energy is safe, clean, and reliable is a tall order. How are they planning to change those deeply ingrained attitudes?
It's a long-term process that requires transparency, education, and open dialogue. They're working to engage communities, address concerns head-on, and demystify nuclear technology.
Right.
They believe that once people understand the facts and see the potential benefits,
Right.
they'll be more open to embracing nuclear as part of the solution.
So it's about building trust and showing people that nuclear energy can be a force for good. It's an ambitious vision, but it seems like they're really trying to tackle these challenges head on.
Absolutely. They're not shying away from the difficult questions. They're engaging with critics, seeking solutions, and pushing for innovation across the entire nuclear industry.
Right.
They believe that if we can overcome these challenges,
Right.
nuclear energy can play a vital role in creating a cleaner, safer, and more sustainable future.
It's a compelling case, but it definitely requires a shift in mindset. We need to move past those old fears and anxieties about nuclear energy and look at it with fresh eyes.
I think that's the key takeaway from this deep dive. We need to have open minds, engage in informed discussions, and be willing to consider all the options on the table. The climate crisis demands bold solutions, and nuclear energy, with all its challenges and complexities, deserves a place at the table.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. The potential of nuclear energy to help us tackle the climate crisis is undeniable, but so are the risks and challenges. It's up to all of us to weigh those factors, carefully engage in informed discussions, and ultimately decide what role we want nuclear energy to play in our future.
It's a decision that we can't afford to ignore. The future of our planet and our own well-being depends on the choices we make today.
Thanks for joining us on this thought-provoking journey into the world of nuclear energy. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to explore these issues further. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better future.